Hey everyone, this is Serverless Camp Week 2 by Bit Project. My name is Ganning, and today we're going to be going over Step 2 in Week 2, getting emotional with Parse-Multipart. This video is going to cover how to create an Azure function, most importantly, how to use Parse-Multipart, its library, to parse an image, right? So let's say you're given an image, such as of a dog. Oops, that's not dog image. Yeah, so let's say you're given an image of a dog. What the computer understands is not going to be how to visually look at this image. It's going to need to break this into something known as like binary, right? Ones and zeros. It's a lot easier for computers to convert text into binary than just looking at an image, because technically speaking, computers can't look at an image. So we're going to be looking at what Parse-Multipart does and how it transforms this image and how we can work with it. And this is a stepping stone to the step of when we're going to be sending an image and getting back your emotion. So let's get started. First says create a new branch called emotional GIFs. So what this step is going to do, as an overview, you're going to be able to send an image and you're going to be able to get back the base64 string. Base64 is what we're going to be representing in text to get the image back instead of like the visual representation. It's going to be a string now. So it says create a new branch called emotional GIFs. So let's go ahead and head to our IDE, which in my case is Visual Studio Code. And to create a new branch, you might recall that the command is git checkout -b and the branch name. So let's click enter. Switch to a new branch called emotional GIFs. That should be right. So that's done. Create a new Azure function called emotional GIFs. I don't know if it's GIFs or GIFs. Interesting. With the HTTP trigger template, install and use the Parse-Multipart library to parse an image from an HTTP request and save its raw data in a variable. So the way we're going to do this, let's go ahead and look at the first step. Create a new Azure function. The way we create a new Azure function is going to our Azure extension on this left side, going to our functions right here, and creating this new clicking the lightning bolt symbol. Sorry, I can't talk today. But yeah, so after you do that, let's select JavaScript because we're going to be coding in Node.js. Type in HTTP trigger, and I think it wanted us to name this function emotional GIFs. So let's go ahead and name it that function, and it will create a template for us. That template was created in this folder right here. So if we want to navigate to that in the command line, we just do cd emotional GIFs. This / is optional. But yeah, so after we have that, we're in our folder, and what it wants us to do is install the Parse-Multipart library. To install a library in NPM, let's first talk about what an NPM library is. So an NPM library is essentially code that other people have written for you that you don't have to write yourself, right? So it's almost like taking other people's code, except they want you to take it. So you might as well take it, because if they want you to take it, I mean, it's pre-written code. You get to save time, right? Perfect. So the one we're going to use is going to be known as Parse-Multipart, and we're going to be looking at NPM. And what NPM is it's called Node Package Manager, and we're going to be coding in Node.js, so that's why it's Node. Package, another name for library, manager, so it's what you're going to use to manage and install everything. So you'll see that this is documentation right here. You can read through it, but I will also explain it as well. So to install the Parse-Multipart library, what you do is just look at this right here. Click this copy button, should say copied at the top. Go back into your command line. Sorry, don't run that actually at first. What you're going to do at first is you're going to do npm init-y. What npm init-y does is it sets up your project folder to be preparing as a place to use npm. I know that kind of sounds confusing, but it just means we're going to set this up. You have to run npm init-y before you install an npm package. So after you do npm init-y, you'll notice that something called a package.json file was created. This just tells us what dependencies we have or what packages we're using. So let's run npm I Parse-Multipart. Run that, and you'll notice that dependencies suddenly now has Parse-Multipart in it, which tells us that it was installed successfully. So let's go ahead and get started. Next thing that it wants us to do is it says use Parse-Multipart to parse an image from an HTTP request. So let's go ahead and look at this content right here, because chances are it's going to have our code in it, right? So installing Parse-Multipart, you'll notice that this is what we have. how do I use this package? So first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to require this library. So what require does is basically it takes the code that you just installed, the library that you just installed, brings that function into your current folder right here. So this is what's actually telling your computer that you're going to be using this. If you used Python before, this is similar to what's known as an import. So, or if you see, it's include, C++ include as well. So yeah, so multipart is our library name. We have imported it. And you'll notice that next up, we have this giant chunk of code right here. Let's go ahead and look at this. We can delete all of this right here because we don't need it. Body, we don't have response messages. Let's just leave that blank for now. And let's paste what we just copied. So it says, here's your boundary. Okay, so let's take this time and go ahead and explain what a multi-part request is. So a multi-part request is, it's going to be, actually, instead of me explaining it, I'm going to use a web page because web pages are a lot better than explaining that I am. So a multi-part request in a nutshell is it's what's going to be happening when, let's say you're on a website and you have a form where you want to upload a file, right? Such as your resume, your transcript, etc. Once you upload that, that file is going to be transferred, is going to be handled through Parse-Multipart. So it's a way of sending large files over the internet. When you send a file, it becomes part of the browser, and that file is uploaded via a multi-part request and sent to the server. So what we're writing right here is essentially the server. The form you see on a website is essentially the form button that you're going to see. A multi-part request is kind of like JSON. So what JSON is it's a key value pair. That's kind of like what this context.res is. Body is a key. This is the value, which we have nothing in it right now. But this is not actually what Parse-Multipart uses, because in a Parse-Multipart request, it's essentially just a long stream of bytes. Bytes is just a chunk, are just chunks of ones and zeros. So it's very big, and you're not going to be able to tell when you're going to have these keys and values in a string of bytes. So what Parse-Multipart uses is it uses what's known as a boundary. So boundary is it just tells the server or the parser when the data when like the actual image data or the file data starts and when it ends. So the boundary usually looks something like this, or if we'll go back to our example, a boundary should be in the format like this right here. Notice that there's usually not a end line. It's just that my screen is too small for it to fit on all one line. So, but yeah, that's what Parse-Multipart is. Feel free to read up more on that if you don't understand it. But you won't technically need to be coding the boundary part, getting it by yourself, because what's nice about the multi-part library is that it will give you a getBoundary function. So what this line of code does is it's going to read the headers of request type. This is generated automatically, by the way. So when you're testing in Postman, you won't actually have to set a header called content type. And content type basically just tells you if it's a JPEG, a PDF, etc. So to do, assign the body variable to the correct value. So the way to access a body in a HTTP request is what's known as rec.body. What this does is, let's open Postman real quick. Oops, I have that on my other monitor. Interesting. So we'll look at that. What an HTTP request, the body, if you'll notice that if we change this to post, we'll be able to specify a body, and that's what we're doing right here. We're doing rec.body. After that, we're going to parse that what we have, and then we're going to send back nothing. But what we want to send back, however, is going to be the base64 string, because that's what they want us to do. Return the image data encoded in base64. Oh, we also have part 1 done. So after we do that, we'll see that what part of the template code do we need? We have module.export right here. We removed that part. So how do we return the image in base64? What we're going to do is coincidentally, let's just copy that code. All right, let's take that, and we need to fill in this blank. We're converting to base64. What goes here is base64. Magic. And after that, what we do, we just return converted result. And you'll notice that right here, we're not actually writing the code or the algorithm that does it. What we're doing is we're just using functions from the multi-part library. What converted, and yeah, so we don't actually have to do it. What we're doing is we're just using code that other people have written, which is perfect. And what this line of code does right here, sorry I didn't explain it earlier, but it just takes the buffer, and a buffer is it's like a stream of bytes, like what a multi-part request is, so that's why we're using it. We're going to grab the parts is essentially a list. we're going to grab the first list item in parts, grab its data, so it's actually going to be the image content there, and then we're going to convert that to the base64 string. So now let's test it. What we can do is, on my keyboard, I'm going to press Fn, F5, or maybe on yours, it's just F5. There might be an error like this right here, but don't worry about it. Mine works just fine, and it gives me that error. So I'm just going to close it out. Yours might show a lot more functions here, but I currently just have one, so I'm just going to copy this one, this link right here. Go ahead and head into Postman. Where's Postman? There's Postman. Okay, cool. Enter that URL there. Go ahead and select form data. And if you hover over this key field, you'll notice that we have something called text. Go ahead and change it to file because we're going to upload a file. And let's just upload a something that I have. Let's see. Maybe this picture looks really good. I guess we're going to use this one. It's just a regular JPEG image, nothing special. Let's click send. And you'll notice that we get a base64 string back. This is a super long string. Images are huge. Strings are not so huge. So when an image is huge and you need to represent that in a string, you're going to get a giant string. So you'll notice that if you look back at our code, it says executed this function, process request, so everything went normally. So that's how we know that our code was good. So what we can do is we have returned it. What's next? Place your function URL. So we're going to do this, we actually need to get our function URL first, right? So in order to get our function URL, we're going to do what's known as deploying our Azure function. So to deploy our Azure function, what we can do is we can head to the Azure tab, go ahead and click this cloud icon, select a function app. What I'm going to specify is I'm just going to call it serverless demo-1. I'm going to call it the same as my repo name. Oops, I should probably click create a new one first, and then demo1, the name. We're going to be running Node 14, so Node.js version 14. We're going to be deploying to Eastern US. You can choose whichever one is closest to you. So while this is deploying, I'm going to pause the video because this does take quite a long while. Okay, so our function has finished deploying. VS Code gave me deployment to serverless demo1 completed. So let's go ahead and head to Azure portal. This is what you should see, maybe without these resources, but let's head to function app because that's what we have. We named our serverless demo1, find that right there. And you'll notice that this overlay appears. So let's go ahead and head to functions because we have that. Get the emotional GIFs function, get the function URL. And this is what's actually going to be the equivalent of your local host URL right here. So now this is a live URL that you can hit and get the same response. Let's go ahead and send it. You notice that the response is the same. So now we have an actual endpoint that we can use by any other people. By the way, a localhost URL just means that only you on your current computer can use it. So we have that URL. What it wants us to do, place it in a repository secret called emotional endpoint. The way you add repository secrets is you can go ahead and head to settings. I'm going to open this in a new tab. Go ahead and go to secrets down here. Go to actions, new repo secret, paste that in. Go ahead and grab your function URL. Click add secret. The reason we're doing this is actually so that the bot can check your code. If you don't do this, your step is going to fail. So go ahead and do that. And it says commit your code to emotional gifs/index.js on the emotional gifs branch. So let's go ahead and do that. So to check what branch we're on, what we're going to do is we're just going to type git status. Scroll up a bit. It says on branch emotional gifs. Perfect. What we're going to do, let's cd out of this folder. Let's go ahead and do git add dot. Git commit -m, add emotional gifs step 2, git push origin emotional gifs. Let's add that to GitHub. What we can do now is go ahead and head to this, create a pull request, go ahead and create it. You can go ahead and fill that out, but I'm just not going to because I'm lazy. But yeah, so it's going GitHub is going to go ahead and run your code. This is CounselorBot running your check right here. And it does take a minute or two, so be patient with it. I will be right back after it finishes. Yeah, so you'll notice that CounselorBot has passed our check, which means that we are doing good, and that means we did everything correctly. So let's go ahead and click merge, confirm merge, and we finish this issue. So we are good. Thanks for coming to this video. Feel free to ask me if you have any questions.